guys. Welcome to week 3 of virtual learning. This is becoming exciting, right? So today we're going to go over lesson 3.2, and that has to do with climate, weather, and life on Earth. And so with that, we're going to get started with our first instructional video for this week. So there will be 2 this week. Make sure you listen to both and that you understand both. Again, remember my office hours are from 11 to 12:30 every single day. So Monday through Friday, 11 to 12:30. And I am available to answer any of your questions. So please, if you have any questions regarding this presentation or anything else, your invasive species project, or anything to do with that, please let me know so that I can help you. Okay, I don't want to wait till the last minute. You don't understand something and now you're scrambling. You're not going to give me the quality work that I know that you can complete. So with that being said, let's go ahead and share my screen so that you can follow along with me on our presentation for week 3. All right, so week 3 is from April 13th through the 17th, and we are on lesson 3.2, climate and weather and life. And again, just to remind you guys what our statement of inquiry is. So our statement of inquiry is sustainability and balance of different ecosystems and environments are distributed and changed by the interfering of humans. So we are talking about sustainability and balance. How does sustainability and balance play into climate and weather? Like, why are we learning about climate and weather? That's earth science. What does that have to do with biology? Climate and weather, what does that have to do with sustainability? What does that have to do with balance? This is what makes sure that everything is kept in balance on Earth so that living organisms can continue to thrive. So we are going to look at this lesson, climate and weather, even though probably unexpected, not something that we would probably, or that you would have thought you would have learned in biology. But in any case, it does play a huge role in sustainability and balance. All right, so our standards for this week are going to be SC 912 L 17.4, and you're going to describe the changes in ecosystems resulting from seasonal variation, climate change, and succession. So you're going to be able to explain what is happening in these climates, why do the different climates occur, what is the difference between a seasonal variation, and what are climate changes and how are they involved with all of this balance and whatnot. The second standard is going to be SC 912 L 17.8. That is recognize the consequences of losses of biodiversity due to catastrophic events, climate changes, human activity, and the introduction of invasive or non-native species. So again, you guys are completing a project on invasive and non-native species as we speak. And you're going to, at the end of this is going to be part 2, and part 2 is going to be assigned. And part 2 has to do with the climate and the weather that these invasive species are adapted to now. And how does climate and weather play a role in these invasive species, and how are they shaping and changing our environment? All right, so the assignments for week 3. So first you're going to listen to both my instructional videos for chapter 3, lesson 2, climate, weather, and life. You're going to answer the review questions posted at the end of the PowerPoint, and you're going to submit those answers. And I'm going to also post those questions as an assignment. Just know that they're not 2 different assignments. It's the same exact assignment. I'm going to copy and paste these questions, put them into assignment. The assignment is going to be titled Lesson 3.2 Review Questions. So look out for that one. Discussion. You're going to complete a discussion on greenhouse effect. And there's a long question. It's just one question. You're going to complete that and put it into the discussion for this week. So you have 3 assignments that will be titled Greenhouse Effect. The next assignment is going to be completing part 2 of your invasive species project. Now, this invasive species project is going to have multiple parts, but please keep in mind that all of your parts are going to be, they're going to be put together as a PowerPoint presentation, and that is the last portion of the project that you're going to turn into me. So the second part is to answer the questions at the end of this PowerPoint, or my second video, better yet. Remember, you'll be creating a PowerPoint about your invasive species and your plan to remove them. So remember that the scenario is that you are the biologist, I am the congressperson or the congressman, congresswoman, and you have to convince me that this invasive species is harming our environment. It is harming our sustainability, and we need to get rid of it. How are we going to get rid of it? You're going to come up with a plan on how to get rid of this invasive species. Please, 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 please do not pick the Burmese python. A lot of people have already picked it, and that's fine. But if you haven't picked it, thank you, because we're going to have a bunch of Burmese python projects. And pick species from around the world. There's several in Australia that are really interesting, really cool. And you're going to convince me that you know how to remove them, and you know how to remove them better than anyone else. And so you're going to create an argument that we should remove them, and this is how we're going to do it in a solution. So basically that is the PowerPoint. Please look out on Canvas. I'm going to put up some more information on this project and rubrics and whatnot. Okay. All right, so before we get started, I want you to think. So think about these questions throughout the lesson. So as we're going through the lesson, I'm explaining to you the lesson. Please think about these questions. What are their answers? If maybe some of you already know some of these answers, that's excellent. All right, so what is the difference between weather and climate? We use them interchangeably, but they're not the same thing. So what is the difference between weather and climate? How is Earth's climate and average temperature determined? How do we determine climate versus temperature? What causes ocean currents? What causes wind? Okay. What factors shape regional climate? What does climate change involve? Right? These are all things that you need to understand in order to then make good decisions or have this knowledgeable information to understand when people are talking about climate change and what does that mean for us and how are we doing this and why is this a bad thing? Okay. So what does climate change involve? How does climate play a role in sustainability and balance in ecosystem? Now, here is a question that is leading you towards your statement of inquiry for you to understand, or if you keep this question in mind, you will at the end of this lesson understand how climate plays a role in our statement of inquiry. And what does that mean? All right, so your domain vocabulary, you have 3 words this time. And I know this is a lot different than when we do in class, because when we do domain vocabulary in class, we do 20-something definitions, and that is the definitions for the entire unit. But since we're virtual learning, this is a lot different. So climate. Climate is defined by patterns and averages of temperatures, precipitation, clouds, and wind over many years. So climate is something that is recorded over many, many years, unlike weather. So weather is a day-to-day information on your short-term changes in temperature, precipitation, clouds, and wind, day-to-day, minute to minute. It changes, it varies. So That is basically the difference between climate and weather. Climate is something that's over thousands, many years, hundreds of years, tens of years, you know, a long time, a long period of time. Weather is from day to day, changes. All right, so climate also includes the frequency of extreme weather events such as heat waves, droughts, and floods. So not only does it include temperature, precipitation, clouds, and wind, it also includes extreme weather. Weather changes rapidly and can be tough to predict. So that is why sometimes a meteorologist will say 90% rain and then there is no rain. It's very hard to predict what is going to happen from one moment to the next or from 1 minute to the next minute. Right? And then your last word is greenhouse effect. And this is the process in which certain gases like carbon dioxide, methane, and water vapor will trap the sunlight and the heat in our Earth's atmosphere. Okay. All right, so the global climate system. So the global climate system is a system that is powered and shaped by the total amount of solar energy retained in the biosphere as heat. So if you notice at this, if you look at this picture, you're getting solar energy that is entering the Earth's atmosphere. And then that Earth's atmosphere is going to either redirect the energy or absorb the energy. And if it absorbs it, it's going to retain it in that biosphere as heat. Okay. All right, so winds and ocean currents are also involved in this global climate system. We're talking about the energy from the sun reaching the Earth's atmosphere trapping this energy as heat, and then the wind and the ocean currents are then created because of this entrapment of heat, and the entire system is the global climate system. Right, so solar energy and the greenhouse effect. Right, so the main force that affects climate is that jolly yellow circle to the right-hand side, which is the sun, right? Mr. Golden Sun. So the main force that affects climate is the sun. So solar energy will strike through as sunlight. So the energy that travels from the sun, those electromagnetic waves that travel from the sun to the Earth's atmosphere will then come to the Earth's atmosphere as sunlight and will then either be absorbed by the atmosphere or be redirected by the atmosphere or be trapped in the atmosphere. All right, so those are the three options for that solar energy once it is trapped or once it is transmitted to Earth. So energy is either absorbed and converted into heat or re-radiated into space or trapped within the atmosphere. All right, so it's important to know that Earth's average temperature is determined by the balance between the amount of heat that stays in the atmosphere and the amount of heat that is lost to space. Okay, so Earth's average temperature, this is that temperature that everyone's always talking about, went down 1 degree Celsius or went up 1 degree Celsius or whatnot. This Earth's average temperature is determined by the balance between the amount of heat that stays in the atmosphere and the amount of heat that is lost in space. All right, greenhouse gases. So greenhouse gases are a lot like, I don't know, I don't think here in Florida we see many of these greenhouses. I remember when I went to Florida International University for college, they have a humongous greenhouse. And I always wondered, you know, why keep a greenhouse, right? So it makes all the sense when you learn about ecology. Now, they compare these greenhouse gases or this greenhouse effect to a greenhouse, and we're going to go over why that is. So balance is largely controlled by the concentrations of greenhouse gases. So these greenhouse gases are carbon dioxide, methane, and water vapor. Those are the three greenhouse gases that will cycle through different types of cycles in order to either go into the atmosphere, come back down. All right, so the carbon dioxide cycle, we know this. When we do cellular respiration or when we do photosynthesis, we release carbon dioxide, the plants use the carbon dioxide, and it goes through a cycle of photosynthesis and then releases oxygen, which we use, and we use this oxygen, and then we release the carbon dioxide, and it continues in these cycles. Same thing with methane. Methane is another one of these greenhouse gases that will go through a cycle, and water vapor as well. So gases allow visible light to enter, but trap the heat. So much like a greenhouse. Now, a greenhouse is a house that is full of glass. And what happens is that when the sun beams its solar energy into this house of glass, the energy passes through the window. So it's able to transmit the energy all the way through. But the heat stays inside because now the solar, just like your car, right? When you get into the car and it's been super hot outside, the energy from the sun is traveling through those windows. But then once it's inside and it's hot, it cannot escape anywhere. So same like the greenhouse. The energy travels into the greenhouse and then it gets trapped in there. That energy turns into heat, thermal energy, and that thermal energy stays trapped inside of that greenhouse and allows whatever's growing in that greenhouse to continue growing, although it is snowing outside, like our picture here. All right, so these gases will enter, I'm sorry, I was at the top of that. All right, so without greenhouse effect, your Earth would be 30 degrees Celsius cooler than it is today. So we need the greenhouse effect to happen. That is what protects us. That is what warms our Earth. And there's a really, really interesting, really cool episode on One Strange Rock that I recommend you watching. I believe it's called Heat, maybe. I believe it's called Heat, the title. If anything, I could look for it. But that one is really, really good, and it explains exactly what the atmosphere does for us and how life is possible on Earth because of this atmosphere and the changes in this atmosphere and what we're doing to the atmosphere and whatnot. And really good show, so I totally recommend it. All right, so these gases will enter and exit the atmosphere by cycles of matter. So changes in the cycle affect the concentration of gases in the atmosphere, right? So if we have more gases in the atmosphere, then Earth will be hotter. If we have less gases in the atmosphere, then Earth will be cooler. So this can be caused by human activity, but can also be caused by non-human causes. So yes, we are causing some of these issues, but then there can be non-human causes to cause these greenhouse effects. Okay, so again, more concentration of gas, Earth's atmosphere retains more heat. Less concentration of gas, Earth's heat escapes and Earth cools. All right, latitude and solar energy. There are three main climate zones. Those three main climate zones are tropical, temperate, and polar. And I want you guys to research where do we fall in one of these three climate zones? Are we in the tropical, are we in the temperate, or are we in the polar climate zone? And so tropical is near the equator, and then the temperatures near the sea level will remain warm and hot all year round. Temperate is where summers are really hot and winters can be very cold as well. And then polar are where winters are bitterly cold and summers barely get warm. Right? If you notice, we have two temperate zones, one tropical zone, and two polar zones. Okay, so we're going to stop this video here, and then we're going to start the next video with this new information, because I want to talk about winds, ocean currents, and all of those other things all together.